Taehyung leaned closer, his gaze soft yet intent as he looked at Jungkook. "Well, Jungkook," he said, his voice calm but filled with warmth, "the night is still young, and I'm all yours." Jungkook felt his breath catch, his heart racing at the proximity. "No need to wait any longer," Taehyung added, his lips curving into a small smile before gently pressing them to Jungkook's. A soft laugh rumbled in Taehyung's chest as he pulled Jungkook closer, their foreheads briefly touching. His hands rested lightly on Jungkook's waist, holding him steady yet tenderly. "You know," Taehyung began, his tone taking on a playful edge, "I've been thinking about the outfits you wear on stage. Especially the ones that fit a little too well." He leaned in, his lips brushing Jungkook's ear as he whispered, "Can't help but wonder how they look, folded neatly on the chair in my room." Jungkook's cheeks turned pink, but he managed a shy laugh. "Oh, have you now?" he asked, tilting his head slightly to meet Taehyung's gaze. The boldness in his voice was faint, but it was there, growing with every moment they stayed close. "Yes," Taehyung replied, his voice lower now, almost a hum. "I've imagined it more than once." Jungkook bit his lip, his confidence building as he gently leaned into Taehyung, his hands resting on the older man's chest. "Well, maybe if you're patient, Hyung, you'll get to see that." Taehyung chuckled again, his deep voice resonating. "Patient," he mused, his lips curving into a smirk. "I've already been patient, Jungkook. Watching you on stage, moving the way you do, you've been driving me crazy. And those outfits of yours? Don't get me started." Jungkook shook his head, a small laugh escaping him. "Hyung, you're impossible, am I?" Taehyung teased, his hands slowly tracing up Jungkook's back. "Or am I just honest?" Jungkook leaned closer, resting his head briefly against Taehyung's shoulder, his laughter softening as the moment grew more tender. "Maybe a bit of both," he admitted, his voice quiet. The two stayed like that for a moment, the tension between them shifting into something softer, deeper. Taehyung broke the silence, his tone filled with warmth. "You know, you're dangerous too, Jungkook. The way you perform, the way you carry yourself, you've got a way of leaving me speechless." Jungkook lifted his head to look at Taehyung, his lips curving into a shy smile. "Dangerous?" Taehyung nodded. "Very." Jungkook's confidence seemed to blossom under the weight of Taehyung's words. He leaned in closer, his lips brushing softly against Taehyung's cheek before whispering, "Then I guess I should show you just how dangerous I can be." Taehyung's gaze softened, his grip on Jungkook tightening just slightly. "You're full of surprises, aren't you?" "Only for you," Jungkook replied, his voice carrying a mix of affection and playfulness. Taehyung smiled, his hand coming up to cup Jungkook's cheek. "Good," he said softly, his thumb brushing over Jungkook's skin. "I like surprises." Their lips met again, this time slower, more deliberate, as if the moment itself demanded nothing less than their full attention. They pulled away slowly, their breaths mingling in the cool air around them. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding, the kind that only came from shared moments of intimacy. Taehyung's eyes never left Jungkook's, the warmth in his gaze like a silent promise. He reached out again, gently brushing a lock of hair from Jungkook's forehead. "You're not as innocent as you seem, are you?" Taehyung asked, a playful glint still in his eyes. Jungkook smiled, a hint of mischief in his expression. "Maybe not," he admitted, leaning into Taehyung's touch. "But I think you're enjoying this side of me." Taehyung chuckled softly, his fingers now tracing the edge of Jungkook's jaw. "I think I'm enjoying all sides of you." There was something about the way Taehyung spoke, the sincerity in his voice mixed with the teasing edge, that made Jungkook's heart flutter. He shifted slightly, moving even closer, his chest nearly pressing against Taehyung's. "What else have you been thinking about?" Jungkook asked, his voice a little lower than before. Taehyung paused for a moment, his expression unreadable for the briefest second before his lips curved into a knowing smile. "I've been thinking about how you look at me, how you always seem to know exactly what I want without me having to say a word." Jungkook's breath caught, his heart beating a little faster. "And what do you want?" he asked, the words slipping out before he could stop them. Taehyung's gaze deepened, his eyes never leaving Jungkook's. "I want to see more of you. Not just on stage, but in ways that make me forget the world outside this moment. I want you to feel everything I feel." Jungkook's pulse quickened at Taehyung's words, his confidence growing as he leaned in, this time not holding back. "Then let's not waste any more time," he said softly, his lips brushing against Taehyung's inner kiss. It was more than just playful. It was an unspoken promise, one that they both knew was only the beginning. The atmosphere between Taehyung and Jungkook shifted, the air heavy with a mix of affection and curiosity. There was a quiet intensity as they moved together, each moment adding to the connection that was unfolding between them. Taehyung's hand brushed against Jungkook's cheek, a gesture that felt tender and full of meaning. Jungkook met Taehyung's gaze, his heart beating a little faster under the weight of the older man's attention. It wasn't just about the chemistry between them, it was the unspoken understanding that had been building for some time now. There was a comfort in the way their bodies seemed to naturally lean toward each other, each moment flowing with ease. "Taehyung," Jungkook murmured, his voice soft, yet carrying the weight of everything they hadn't yet said aloud. He could feel the older man's hands steadying him, holding him in place with a kind of gentle strength. Taehyung smiled softly, the corners of his lips curling up as he leaned in, his face close enough that Jungkook could feel his breath. He replied, his tone warm and inviting, a subtle question hanging in the air between them. Jungkook hesitated, unsure of how to articulate the feeling rising within him. But the quiet, steady presence of Taehyung gave him the courage to continue. "It's just, sometimes I don't know what to say around you," he admitted, a light blush coloring his cheeks. Taehyung's eyes softened, and he brought a hand up to gently cup Jungkook's cheek. "You don't need to say anything," he said, his voice reassuring. "Just be here with me." The simplicity of the words settled in Jungkook's chest, grounding him. It was easy to get lost in the energy between them, but in that moment, it was as if Taehyung was reminding him to just exist in the quiet, to appreciate the intimacy of being close without the need for grand gestures or heavy declarations. Jungkook smiled back, his confidence growing in the gentle exchange. "All right," he whispered, leaning in closer to Taehyung, his forehead resting gently against his. For a while, they remained like that, words unnecessary. The bond between them was becoming more clear, a deep, unspoken connection that needed no explanation. Just the soft touch of hands, the shared breaths, and the warmth of simply being together. It wasn't about rushing toward anything, it was about appreciating the moments that had already passed and whatever was to come next. Their eyes met again, and this time, Jungkook wasn't afraid to let himself fully smile, letting go of any lingering hesitation. He didn't need to force anything. With Taehyung, everything felt natural, comfortable. "Thank you," Jungkook whispered softly, his voice barely audible but full of sincerity. Taehyung gave a slight chuckle, brushing his thumb gently over Jungkook's cheek. For what? For being you? Jungkook said, the words surprising even himself as they left his mouth. He hadn't intended to say them out loud, but somehow, they felt right. Taehyung's smile deepened, his heart swelling with a warmth he hadn't expected. I'm glad to be here with you, Jungkook, he replied, and the simplicity of that sentiment felt like everything they needed in that moment.